This episode of the KIPS Personal Trainer Application Podcast is brought to you by Time to Train Fitness, your home for on-demand workouts for every level of fitness. Exercise with amazing certified instructors that want you to push through any barriers. At Time to Train Fitness, you'll find quality workouts across 6 class formats, including indoor cycling, HIIT, bar, yoga, strength training, and dance cardio. Stream brand new classes releasing every week in our over 425 on-demand library. Use the code in the description to view all the membership options and to start a free 5-day trial. Get ready to press play on your next workout.
Welcome to the KIPS Personal Trainer Application Podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia. I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. We have somebody that I consider a rock star in the fitness industry, somebody that is educating on the conference circuit, going around sharing great education, and not just pieces that I'll say are easy. We're talking about topics like anatomy, physiology, corrective exercise, things that people can take and apply right away with their clients. We have Dr. Evan Osar on the podcast. First of all, thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me, Tyler. It's really an honor and a blessing to be here and to share with your audience.
Love it. I love it. So we're going to kick things off for listeners that potentially have not seen you on the conference, been to one of your lectures. Can you give a brief description of your current business and your educational background?
For sure. So I currently work in Chicago, Illinois with my wife, Janice Maddock. We own and operate 2 businesses. We have a brick and mortar business, Chicago Integrative Movement Specialist, and that's where I work as a chiropractic physician. Janice works as a manual therapist as well as a movement therapist. We have a full-time integrative movement specialist in our office as well. We cater mostly to individuals experiencing posture, movement related issues to help them live the best quality lives they can live. We also have an education company, and that's Integrative Movement Institute. And that's where we teach our proprietary system, the Integrative Movement System, to health and fitness professionals around the world. Obviously, it's a little limited now as far as the travel's concerned. However, we still do it virtually, and we teach health and fitness professionals about the proprietary system, so that one of the things that I struggled with early on in my career was just understanding a process, how to take a client from day one and walk them through and take them on the journey through the health and fitness journey. So the integrated movement system was really a way for me to help my own patients. And then fitness professionals found that it helped their clients as well and helped them be more successful with their clients. And that's really how the business and the brand were built.
Nice. So I know that we share a common value or outlook on education and how it influences programming, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to start diving into something that you're going to probably get a kick out of. I know I got a kick out of when I saw it. And to give some backstory to this, I don't really engage in, we'll call it Facebook drama. And I didn't on this one, but I was scrolling through one of the groups and it was one that popped up my feed. It was in on Facebook, like certified group fitness instructor, something like that. And somebody was asking about PT certifications. And somebody had said, oh, don't do the ISSA one. And this is nothing against ISSA or any of the organizations, but they were saying, don't do this one because it has too much of the exercise science, the anatomy, physiology, and it doesn't really tell you how to program for your clients. And I'm reading that and I'm just like, I'm shaking my head. I'm just like, that doesn't make sense in my head. And I thought, I was like, okay, I know I'm going to be doing a podcast with Dr. Osar next week. I got to bring this up and really have him lay the hammer down on this, because it's one of those things that once you understand joints, muscles, how they all work together, you're like, yeah, everything affects one another. And you can't say that one is not important for training clients. So Dr. Osar, how do you feel anatomy influences programming?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was having this discussion with a good friend and colleague of mine in the industry who is an awesome program designer. And we had this very conversation about the importance of understanding anatomy, biomechanics, and motor control. And again, you don't need to be a PhD in any one of those subjects. But here's the thing I always ask fitness professionals when they bring that question to me, or when somebody's challenging individuals like you and I on this topic. Say you have a pretty nice car, a pretty decent car, and you want to keep this car for a period of time. Would you take your car to the first mechanic who just basically says, hey, you know what? We're going to take a look at it. And if it needs new tires, we'll put new tires on it. If it needs a new carburetor, we'll put new carburetor on it. We'll probably put some spark plugs in it too. And then you ask the individual, hey, does the car really need that? Oh, no, I don't know anything about a car. I just throw it all in there because that's what I've been taught that the car needs. Or are you going to the specialist that understands your car, knows how to assess your make and model of your car, who is able to diagnose it, so to speak, and give you the most appropriate parts and recommendations for your car? Which mechanic are you going to go to? Obviously, you're choosing the latter. The individual that understands your car, understands how to assess your car, evaluate your car, and then make the best recommendations. And that's, to me, when you start to look at health and fitness professionals, why do we feel that we can just go write some programs because we know how to put some exercises together without actually understanding the individual that we're creating the program for? We don't have a background in anatomy or biomechanics or motor control or really understand those things. We just understand exercises. And that's like understanding parts of a car, but not actually how all the different parts sort of work together. So in a very easy to understand and relate to example, I think it really illustrates the importance of understanding, because again, if you are working with elite athletes, right, you can get away with, and I'm not recommending this, but you can get away with just giving them some exercises. You never would do that though, right, Tyler, right? You never go to a professional athlete and say, hey, I got a bunch of exercises. I know how to program very well. Hey, let's go train together. You'd find out a whole lot about them, their sport, and understand what they need as that professional athlete. However, when we're working with the general population, you're working with a very heterogeneous population. You're working with a group of individuals that maybe has never exercised in their lifetime. They're coming in with orthopedic issues, degenerative joint disease, sarcopenia, osteoporosis, balance issues, and all the related musculoskeletal issues related to those sort of conditions. So again, we have to understand what we're working with and who we're working with so that we can create the most effective programs. So in a nutshell, that's usually how I describe it, and really helps illustrate the importance of what we do and how to, I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit here today as well, how to differentiate yourself. Because one of the biggest challenges we all have is, how do we get more clients? How do we reach the right clients? How do we make ourselves differentiate ourselves from the rest of the industry? That's in your knowledge, your education, and the process that you take your clients through. That's how you differentiate yourself from the rest of the industry and the rest of the noise, to be, quite frank, with the rest of the noise in the industry.
Yeah. I'm going to approach my response from first a business angle. When I worked as a personal trainer, I'll admit that I was not the best seller, that I could sell huge packages and just raking in the clients. I'll admit that, not one of those people. And I will say, though, that where I did really excel was in the working with my clients, individualizing programs. And the reason I bring that up is because people in the gym notice that. They will notice that right away. And even as clients, new clients, let's say you don't even work in a gym, but if you are taking in clients, people are smarter these days, and they most likely have worked potentially with a trainer. So when they come to you and you're able to individualize something for them, being able to show them something new that maybe they have already seen. So not necessarily new for them, but something that they've done before, but you give it to them in a different way. And then all of a sudden a light bulb goes off in their head. Like, oh, wow, I've never had that explained to me that way. You are providing something for them that's a benefit. And as we were hinting at, you're individualizing it for them. Dr. Osar hit on it so many times about how people are going to come to you with all these different issues, so many different issues because of their individualized health history. They're different. They have all these different things based off their background. So taking something that's a cookie cutter, and that's, I think, where education is, I can't say it's lacking with entry-level certification, because that's what we have to remember, that these are entry-level certifications, that it's somebody that is just trying to get their foot in their door. So then what's that next step is where I think we need to think with that. But people need to understand that an entry-level certification, and I have to put my caveat on that, this is my opinion on it, that an entry-level certification is just what it is. You can go to any single one of them and you're going to get entry-level education. Dr. Osar and myself, we have spent quite some time on our education, and it's not just a weekend that you do it. It's years and years that goes through it to get initials after your name. So before we moved on to the next question, with individualizing now and creating programs for the person sitting in front of you, how would you say that the selling angle comes into it? I feel like that's one of the issues that a lot of us struggle with, is that you have somebody that has some issues. And how I mentioned, customers are smart these days. What is typically a good approach, in your opinion, to kind of bring that to light? How you offer something new, offer something different. How do you sell that to a new client?
Yeah, great question. And it's really, like you said, and I'm glad you said that, it's really about the client is so much more educated today. When clients find me, they usually find me online or from referrals. And, we don't do any advertising outside of our, social media and our YouTube, free education on YouTube and things like that. So when the client comes to me, they have heard lots of opinions. And usually what I hear, like I just had a brand new client start with me virtually, and they said, it sounded like you were talking to me, like you understood my issue. He'd been seeing a chiropractor for an entire year in person. He'd been to physical therapy, several physical therapists, and he had been to use a couple other training type approaches. And this is not any disrespect to any of those individuals. So the consumer today is very educated. Now, it doesn't mean they're accurately educated, but they're coming to us with a lot of information. And I'm very similar to you, Tyler. It sounds like you're telling my story. Like I was never good at selling. Even now, I to be honest with you, I'm not great at selling, personal training or fitness or even health for that matter. What I'm great at is understanding the individual, connecting to the individual and understanding what they're saying to me and hearing that information that they're giving me to see where the sort of holes were in the other approaches that they've been through, and to give them a very systematic process. And that's only because I've been doing it long enough. And more importantly, I have the education, right? You mentioned the education. We keep coming back to that. It's a different level of education. I couldn't have done in the beginning what I do now because I just didn't have the experience. I didn't have as much education. So I do believe the education and being able to explain to your client your process and the process that you're going to take them through, that's ultimately what differentiates yourself, and also helps to bring the client in, because they'll start to understand or appreciate that it's not just about exercises. It's not just about cracking the back like a chiropractor may do. It's not just about a bunch of random or even generic physical therapy exercises. You have a process of how you're going to intake your client, how you're going to assess them, how you're going to create the programs, how you're going to follow up and communicate with them. That's all part of the process. One of the things we do, and I'm sure you do this as well, because pretty much everything else we do is pretty much on par, is we have a very strong follow-up sort of campaign. So just say a new patient, does either in-person or online consult. That person gets a full write-up after my session. Like, this is what we talked about. This is what you came in with. These were what your goals are. So I want them to understand that I understand what their goals are. Here's what I found. Here's what we're going to do about it. Here's your exercise program. So they have all that in a very thorough email. Then after each session, I'm updating their program. So after the next session, their program is updated. We're just checking in. And each email may not be as long or as thorough, but there's always that constant communication. So they understand that I'm 100% with them. You're not just one of 100 of my patients. You are as important to me as any of my other patients are. So to me, that's been the greatest thing, because no one is going to their medical doctor, and getting an email follow-up unless they request it, unless there's something seriously wrong. Then they're like, okay, yeah, your MRI was fine, Mrs. Jones. They're not getting a thorough write-up like that. So again, think about your other fitness professionals, right? No, very few personal trainers are following up with emails or texts or whatever. I'm not saying give out your cell phone, but very few fitness professionals are following up on a regular basis. Besides that, preliminary email or I should say newsletter or something like that. So if you can create that personal, sort of relationship with your client, let your client know that, number one, we're going to help solve your problem, whatever your problem is, whether it is a musculoskeletal problem, whether it is a maybe weight loss problem, a nutrition or a health problem, because everybody's coming to us with a problem, right, Tyler? They have a problem that they want to solve. So that's one of the most important things to gather in your intake is understanding the deep down, the root cause problem that your client is trying to solve. And that's where some of these generic approaches and some of these big facilities that people go to, that's where they get lost in the system. The individual they were working with, whether it be a medical doctor, chiropractor, physical therapist, personal trainer, they didn't really understand what they wanted out of that relationship. So we're really good about finding and understanding that, and helping create a program, an individualized program, as you mentioned, for that individual to solve their problem. And then also, we're super honest and upfront. If I can't help somebody, I want to get you to the person that can. So if I'm not the right person, because I'm not the right person for everyone, every client is not the right client for me, I'm going to get you to somebody who I believe will help you achieve your goal. So understanding who you can as well as who you can or not best in the world for is just as important in developing it and maintaining that relationship.
Yeah, so many gems right there. The one that I'm going to go off with onto this next part is about separating yourself. That's what I really took away right there, is separating yourself from, I don't like using the word competition, but other people in the industry, separating yourself, going that extra mile, because potentially maybe you looked at yourself, you saw, okay, I'm lacking as a salesperson, but what I can excel in, which I do feel comfortable with, is with my follow-up, my assessment, my programming, all these areas that you have control over, that you can take those and really excel in those. And I think that's a great piece of advice right there for somebody in the industry, whether you're just starting off or you've been a seasoned veteran for a while, and it's going to help out. And because I look at it the same way with working in a facility or working in an area that has other trainers. And if you can't help somebody, pass them off. Things will come back. I believe that things do come around, and I've done that in the past, and things do come around. They might not be immediate. And I think that when you look at your situation, it might be hard to, oh man, I could really use a new client right now. But if you can't help them and you know somebody that works in the same facility as you that can help them, pass them off, because you'll be doing a better service for them and things will come back to you. It's something that you mentioned with separating yourself. And it was very, very quick, but I have to come back to it because it's one of my favorite things, is YouTube. How do you use YouTube with your business?
I'm going to be upfront with you. I don't know a whole lot about it. So I will tell you what I do. And if it helps someone, then great. So I generally will do a weekly Facebook Live. So one of the things that I've learned from multiple people, I'm not sure, I just know the name Michael Port off the top of my head, but I'm sure I've heard it from multiple other people. Always have something free, a low barrier offer to give your clients and your potential clients. And we've always done free videos, and they always go to YouTube. So now what I do is I do Facebook Live once per week, and then we upload that video to YouTube. And that's where most of my clients, when they find me on YouTube. So because of the YouTube videos. And again, I don't know anything about search words and optimization and all that. I just know that I create a video mostly for our current community. And it's basically just to keep your name, because you have to stay relevant, right? So it's just to keep myself relevant in front of our community, to give good information, to serve our community, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Is you're trying to serve your community, whether you're a community of clients or potential clients, because you never know what information you're going to put out there that's going to resonate with them, and or at what time it resonates with them. Because maybe you're talking about shoulder today, as I did in my Facebook Live this week, but the client doesn't have a shoulder issue and it's not really relevant. Well, maybe 6 months from now you're talking about shoulder, and now they just have a little rotator cuff injury. So they're like, oh, wait a second, you're talking about rotator cuff. I have that going on. So you have to be consistent. First, you have to have a low barrier offer or free education. That's how we use our Facebook Live and our YouTube. We also use our Instagram account the same way. And then you just have to stay relevant and consistent. Relevant meaning like the education, again, keep coming back to that education piece of it, and to stay consistent. Just stay consistent so people understand and see that you're not just there to sell them something. So you're not always trying to sell them a new program or book or a PDF or something like that, or an online coaching. That they see that you're out there giving lots of free information and giving of yourself, so they get to, it's sort of generic, and I hate saying it, but so they get to know, like, and trust you.
Yep. As someone that places a lot of emphasis on YouTube with both of my businesses, what I can tell from my perspective is you're consistent. The quality is there, not just with the content, which is very high in my opinion, but also the video quality. I've seen them on Facebook Live, and I mean, you have a camera that looks nice. You look good in them. The background is there. All those pieces that make it look professional, that somebody that is looking for somebody for help, somebody that is about to invest some money. What I've been saying is take those things in their head away, take off any barriers from them. If you appear professional, people are going to feel much more comfortable investing. And if you're speaking to them at that time, they'll want to work with you. So I can say that those are the things that I see, and the consistency, all those things, 100% agree. And I love that you mentioned you don't know those ends of it, but I see it. And I love it. And I love that you do those things, and you hit on the nail with so many things with it, that with being relevant, but also the consistency factor from a business end, you are creating consistent quality content. I'll say it over and over. I almost say it, I feel like, in every single podcast that I do, that creating consistent quality content for social media is the hardest thing. It's one of the hardest things for a business to do. You don't know where to start, or what type of content am I making? So you have to find these strategies to be consistent. So this is something that Dr. Osar does with his business, that he stays consistent with, and there's a reason behind it. With KIPS, if you check out our YouTube, you'll see different series, the podcast included, is one of those. The podcasting, the Level Up series that we have, the second podcast. So these are all ideas, strategies to keep the consistent quality content going. So it's one way to look at business for somebody out there, and it can be applied whether you're just a personal trainer, you run a business, whatever that might be. You can find a way to implement it yourself. I'm going to bring this back now to education, because I know that we like talking about it, and it's a great topic for now entry-level trainers. They just got their certification, and they're like, okay, where do I go next? What do I need to study? What's going to help me the most? What are some of your favorite texts, resources, certifications? Can potentially not even be a certification. What are those ones that you typically like, yeah, go check this out?
Wow, you put me on the spot there. I usually have lots to say, but so I would find individuals that resonate with the audience that you want to work with. So I work mostly with the baby boomer and senior population, the older population. So I'm going to follow people that I respect, that have the education, the knowledge, and they actually train that population, because there's lots of people talking about training certain populations, but they don't actually work with that population. They just have a lot of good theories of what works with that population. So if you work with the older population that has musculoskeletal issues, balance issues, fall problems, osteopenia, sarcopenia, those kind of issues that impact our older population, then I would check out my friends at Functional Aging Institute, for example, Dr. Dan Ritchie and Dr. Cody Sipe, good friends of mine, colleagues. We partner on a lot of projects, workshops, as well as online education, both wonderful individuals, because to me, it's not just the quality of the content. So I will follow somebody if the quality of their content is well. I don't highly recommend them if I don't like them as individuals, or I don't like how they practice business. I love these two guys, both as individuals. They're family men. They're, as far as I know, they're Christian men. They stand behind, they're easy to work with. They stand behind all their products and services. So it's just easy to do businesses with them. And it's easy to recommend them to individuals in the field. So Functional Aging Institute. My one of my closest friends in the industry, Robert Linkle, trainingtheolderadult.com. Again, another individual that, again, family man, stands behind everything he says, does what he says he does. Like I've been out there at his facility, watching him train his older folks, watching him write his programs, watching him create education. We've done education together. So if you train older folks, that's definitely another individual to look at. In the industry, as far as certifications, I'm not super huge on any one certification. Obviously, I think our program we have a year-long program, the Integrative Movement System. It's a 3-day introduction course, and then it's a year-long intensive program. I think that's an amazing course just because we go through the fundamentals of anatomy, biomechanics, motor control, things like that. As far as certifications, Here's the advice I give to a new trainer. Get your certification, and again, I don't think there's one certification that's so much more awesome than any other one. I don't want to say I've had almost all of them at one point or another. I keep my NSCA one certification, and I also keep my NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine, as well. So again, I don't think anyone is so much more awesome than the next one, because I'm going to be quite honest with you. When I took my CSCS, so that was going back to 1997 or 98. So I'm aging myself here a bit. I literally just read the textbook and took the test. I had no business being certified as a CSCS. Now, yeah, I have quite I still don't, I'm down here in Texas. I'm going to evaluate my buddy's clients, and he works with professional athletes. He was the head trainer of the Anaheim Angels. He just basically stepped down just in this off season. So I'm going to go evaluate some of the athletes that he works with and trains. So I'm at the level where I can do that now. Back then, when I was certified, no, I shouldn't work with professional athletes or even collegiate athletes. So was I qualified? Not at all. However, you have to start the process, right? You have to get your credentials somehow. National Academy of Sports Medicine, same thing. Read the book, took the test. It's an online test. So again, not super, high tech or super, educational. I didn't walk away with a lot of groundbreaking information. I passed the test so I could use the certification. However, over the years, it's again coming back to the point. It's important that you continue to build your education, and you probably have to. You have to go to different sources because everyone has a different expertise. Like if you work with professional athletes and you want to know how, what's the best way to increase their speed? I'm not that guy. I don't know how to. I have ideas. I have some theories about how to get them into a better position to increase their speed, but I'm not the guy to help you write a program. Go to Mike Boyle, go to Lee Taft, go to somebody like that specializes in working with that population. So you'll find the resources that fit the population that you want to work with. And the last thing I would say is don't put all your eggs in one basket, because I think the biggest thing that's limiting some of the young folks as they come into the industry now, they hook their wagon up to one technique or one approach. Mike Boyle does this, I'm going to do exactly what he does. Gray Cook does this, I'm going to do exactly what he does. DNS does this, I'm going to do exactly what they do. Everyone has great information. Everyone has gaps in their information, myself included. So look at the population, look at the person you're following. Remember that there's many other approaches that also do work. And one of the things this is actually my final point. One of the things that was good when I first got into the industry in the mid to late 90s, the internet wasn't quite there yet. It was just coming around. So you couldn't just go to the internet and research, hey, how do you train the glutes? It wasn't there, right? Mm-hmm. So you'd have to go out to a conference or go learn something from someone and then go use that and get really good at that. Then you're like, there's some gaps in this approach. Let me go to the next person or the next resource, learn that system, plug that in. Okay, this is really cool. These two things pair really nicely. Well, okay, there's still a little bit of gaps. Whereas now there's so much, all the young trainers, the young chiropractors, the young physical therapists, they're inundated with so much information. YouTube, Instagram, you have all the research studies coming out now. You have so much access to webinars and seminars and experts shouting at us with information that it can be very challenging to understand where to start. So my final point would be learn something, get really good at it, then keep an open mind so you can see where the gaps are in that system, because every system has its benefits. Every system and approach has its gaps. Just stay open-minded, keep learning and growing, and keep looking for those areas, those individuals, or those resources that will help you fill in the gaps. Because that, when at the end of the day, that's what's going to differentiate you between someone who really is an expert and specialist in their field and really is able to solve people's problems, and the people that are just kind of muddling around, just using generic approaches.
Yeah, agree. Only one small joke I'll make before we move on to the next question is that, I mean, you had to read the text to pass some of those certifications. I'll joke that. I didn't even read the text and I passed some of those certifications.
My caveat is I'm not a good test taker.
And we're only joking about these certifications.
Right.
They're, when you have some certain initials after your name, you just spend more time on certain topics. So when you go to a entry-level certification and it's just very, very topical parts of it, it's going to be a lot easier and you don't need to read the text. But that's just my opinion on that. And small jokes, you definitely need to get those in order to get into the industry and continue on. But I had to throw that one in there.
It's all good, man.
With some of these, and I liked what you said about taking what you need from each of these, because there are holes in them. And if you get, it's bad to say stuck with one of them, but when you get so in depth with one of them and all of a sudden you have others in the industry that'll start poking holes in it, because it's going to be with all of them, that you start to question. And I think that taking what you can, applying it is going to be the key for that. Take what you need, take, and then apply it with your clients, because that's the ultimate goal with all this education, is to better your clients' training, their programming, all those kinds of steps, better their health. With now getting to one of our last questions here, and it's not yet, we're not getting the podcast takeaways yet, because I got one more that I want to ask before, because we briefly touched on corrective exercise. I feel like that's one of the hot topics and we're getting more information out there. And I'll say right now, this is not one of my specialties in the industry. It's one of those that, of course, I've read some research. Of course, I've worked with a handful of clients, but it's not really where I put a lot of my eggs in my basket, because it's not one of my areas. With corrective exercise, how do you define it? I think that's one of the first things. How do you define this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one of the topics that, if people say, like, what's your specialty? I'm like, corrective exercise is kind of my specialty. I'm writing a book. I'm working on the second edition of Corrective Exercise Solutions to Common Hip and Shoulder Dysfunction. So it's obviously a topic that's near and dear to me. I wrote the first book 10 years ago. So now 10 years, 2022 will be the 10-year anniversary of the second edition coming out. So corrective exercise to me is, let me just take it back just one step. We do assessment, and when you ask fitness professionals, why do you do it? Why do you assess? And they're like, so you can measure. I'm like, no, you do. I mean, yes, you do. Yes. You do assessment because you're trying to identify your client's current strategy for posture and movement. So basically you're seeing what they do and do well. And you're also, again, to come back to that concept, you're looking for the gaps in their posture and movement strategy that can lead to why they're experiencing chronic tightness, discomfort, and or the loss of performance. So if we're talking about an athlete, when I go to evaluate these athletes, I'm looking for what is your strategy that's keeping you from performing at the level that you need to and or want to achieve. The second step of our integrative movement system process is corrective exercise. And this is where you use your corrective exercise strategy to address what you found in your assessments. So to us, our approach is corrective exercise is helping to establish a more optimal posture and movement strategy. So you assessed to find out your client's current strategy for posture and movement, why they're having tightness, discomfort, and or inability to perform at the levels they need to and or want to. Then you use corrective exercises as a strategy to optimize their posture and movement strategy. Because ultimately what you're doing is then in step 3 is the integration phase. That's when you take these more optimal posture and movement habits and you marry them to the fundamental movement patterns. Squatting, lunging, bending, rotating, pushing, pulling, gait, balance, and carry. You're taking those more optimal habits because those more optimal habits are only as good as the individual can marry them to the fundamental movement patterns. And people will often say, Dr. Osar, I've tried your corrective exercises, they don't work. I'm like, did the exercises not work, or was your process not as efficient as it could be? Because here's what happens. People do corrective exercise. They'll do their foam rolling, they'll do their bird dogs, they'll do their glute activations, they'll do their whatever they're doing from a corrective exercise standpoint. But then they go back and train in the exact same way they were training before. So was the corrective exercise that was a problem, or was your training the problem? And for most of the programs that I look at and the athletes I look at, and even the general population I look at that have been exercising, it's the exercise component of it. It's not the corrective exercises. Yeah, there's better and less good corrective exercises. The corrective exercises really aren't the magic. The magic is in identifying what your client needs for using the most appropriate corrective exercise. And then the real magic is when you marry that to the fundamental movement patterns. You're able to incorporate those more optimal posture and movement habits into the fundamental movement patterns that will ultimately result in your client getting bigger, stronger, faster, reduce the risk of falling, give them more confidence, help them lose that weight, help them develop endurance or speed or flexibility, all those functional outcomes that our programs are designed to set up in the first place.
Yep. I love it. I love it a lot. And the one, I feel like now I'm just telling a joke after each one. The one example that I'll say that people will come across, and before I stopped training individuals one-on-one, I had some clients that seemed to be coming from one specific area. They're 55 plus, they like to golf. They either just recently retired or still working. And with talking about exercises in the application part, one of the individuals came to me and he was basically saying, I just keep having all this shoulder pain, all these issues. And I asked him, like, well, where did you come up with this routine? It's what I was doing in my 20s. And I'd just be like, what? And I'd be like looking around like, is this guy serious over here? Well, you're 55 plus now, potentially 60 plus, and you're still doing the same bench press routine that you did when you were 20s. That's a big red flag right there.
Exactly.
And you will find so many people like that in a gym that, where did you get this program? Well, 10, 15 years ago when I worked with somebody, or when I was in high school or when I was in college, this is what I was doing. Yep. Are you still in high school and college?
Right, exactly.
No. So that's just one of those things that I love. But as we get to the podcast takeaways, the background information that I usually give on this is that when I was watching this documentary, there was this individual, he did 50 Ironmans in 50 states, and I believe it was 50 days. Insane. And wow. A tremendous amount of everything on your body, mental strain, physical strain, everything that you can imagine. And on Twitter, he was asked 3 myths about Ironman training, and he gave them. And I like that. I need to flip that for the podcast now. So what are 3 myths about the fitness industry?
That's awesome. Love it. Number 1, that people are weak and they need to get stronger. I believe that people have suboptimal strategies or inefficient strategies, and that's why they express weakness or tightness or discomfort or falling. Yes, will strength improve lots of things? Absolutely. However, strength rarely, at times it will work, but strength rarely changes strategy. If you have a suboptimal strategy, more strength will not change that strategy. Help the client create a more optimal strategy, the importance of corrective exercise, the importance of using optimal posture and movement strategies. Then help the client develop the strength, the speed, the endurance, the flexibility, the ability to rotate on top of that. Myth number 2, clients need to stretch more. So my take on that is clients need to learn how to breathe better, because when you're breathing in the most optimal manner, you don't get tight. because when you think about the diaphragm, when you think about your respiratory muscles, when you breathe, your ribs expand. When you breathe three-dimensionally, your spine extends. When you breathe, your pelvis actually moves. And all the stuff inside your rib cage, your pelvis, your abdominal contents, they all move. That maintains flexibility. That maintains mobility. That maintains and improves circulation and respiration, the most important functions of your human physiology. When you breathe three-dimensionally, you will not get tight and you will not need that much stretching. Yes, you'll need to move. You'll need to move dynamically. You just won't need to spend lots of time stretching. Myth number 3, there's 1 or 2 or 3 best exercises or best approaches. If you took the 32 NFL football teams, I love football. You and I were discussing football just a little while before we started this podcast. You'll find 32 different programs for how to get your athletes stronger, bigger, faster. Because the ultimate goal of every 32 teams, or all 32 teams, is to win the Super Bowl. And if you look at the teams that win the Super Bowl, and if you go back, you can probably go back decades, you will probably see a very different approach. I think, and I stand by, it's not about your exercises. It's not about how much weight your athletes lift. It's not about how awesome their trainer is. It's about the overall system, and most importantly, even more than the system, it's the process that you take your athletes through, or I should say, not even your athletes, it's the organization. One of the best books about business and sport and life is a book by Bill Walsh, the coach Bill Walsh, the late coach of the 49ers. And I forget the exact title. So here I'm saying this is the best book you should have. Put this in your library and I forget the title. It's something about the score will take care of itself. That may actually be it. The score will take care of itself. And basically, when Bill Walsh took over the San Francisco 49ers, they were a 2-14 team. The second year, so he instituted what he called his system of principles, okay? The second year, they were a 6-10 team. So if you had given up on Bill Walsh, basically he had won 8 games in 2 seasons, which is pretty dismal. The third year, they won the Super Bowl. And because basically Bill Walsh believed that if you follow the system and the process, and if the process didn't work, we would go back to the process and redefine the process or reevaluate the process and change the process. And then get even better at it, change their mindset and their actions off their results. And again, they would go on to win the next 3 out of 4 Super Bowls. So I believe they won 4 in that sort of late 80s, early 90s. So again, a dynasty team. And it was all about the process. And he believed that everyone, the secretaries, the people that sold the popcorn and beer and all that, to your front desk people, to your back end people, to the trainers, to all the people, the uniform people, like everybody was part of this team and responsible for the process and ultimately the success of the organization. So as you look at your own business, as you look at your clients, and whether you're developing a one-on-one business, a small group training, whether it's you by yourself, whether it's you and a few other people, continually go back and evaluate your processes and how you're working with your clients, how you're communicating with your clients, how you're communicating with the rest of your team. And I believe that if you pay attention to those small details and the details that seem to that many people will discount and or just sort of blow over, so to speak, that if you pay attention to those small things and you start to really care about people and care about the small details, you will build a fantastic business, an amazing business, and you will transform people's lives because they will have great success and they'll tell their friends, their family, their coworkers, the rest of the community about the results that they have with you. So that would be I don't know if that was really a myth or maybe a take home.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And I believe the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself.
Yes.
My Philosophy of Leadership. Did a quick search on it. The one item I will say is I 100% subscribe to that. I think that's been a big evolution for myself, is that over the last year, more focusing on what you can control and with the people that you work with, making sure that know that. Focus on what you can control and the process, the protocol that you go through each day. If you focus on those things, just work on getting better. Even they might be fundamental items. Get better at those items. It just solves a lot of items, and you find yourself less comparing yourself, looking at what competition is doing, and more just focusing on what you can do to make yourself better. It's a great outlook that I feel like you get less stress on yourself. You're not saying, oh, well, this person's doing this. Yeah, let them do what they're doing. I'm just going to work on what I can do to improve myself. Really great stuff right there. Dr. Osar, before we sign off, can you please share your social media links, website, all that kind of great stuff?
Awesome. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me at Fitness Education Seminars. We're changing the name of our company, so you can still find me at Fitness Education Seminars on Facebook. You can also find me on my personal page Evan Osar. Our website is Discover IMI, Integrative Movement Institute. Discover IMI. I'm on Instagram the most. I regularly post there. My Instagram account is IIHFE. So it's Instagram IIHFE.
Perfect. Any lectures, conferences coming up?
We have our current series we're doing, and we have an online series actually talking about education. We have a series that I do with my good friend and colleague, Jill Leary. She's an anatomy instructor at the massage school where I met her and where I was her teacher many, many years ago. We do a series called Two Anatomy Geeks. It's on Saturdays. So we're in a last portion of Two Anatomy Geeks for this year. So that's what we're working on for the end of the year. And I'll be finishing up writing my book, Corrective Exercise Solutions. And we're putting together our schedule for next year as well.
Perfect. Make sure you check all these great resources out. Join his Facebook group, follow his page so you can get those live feeds and just see whether you're going there to learn or you just want to get a good example for yourself. Great individual to learn from, grow, all that kind of great stuff. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys and have a great day. Keep spreading the great word, Tyler.